in this example, what we're going to do, we're going to do two examples to show the if then else, but we're going to revisit a example we did earlier, converting dollars to pounds, and remember I showed you in the testing the negative number. Well, we really wouldn't want that to run because it doesn't make sense, and so what we can do is we can use an if then else statement that checks to make sure that the value that they've entered is not nonsensical. And so what we're going to do is we're going to check to see if the value that they enter is greater than 0 or not. And if it is, then we'll go ahead, if it's not, then we will put up an error message and tell them that they need to try again. If it is greater than 0, then we'll let the script go on and do our conversion. So I'm going to go ahead and use this right here. And I'm going to start out with an if statement. And I'm going to say in parentheses, oops, can't do it there. Have to get their input first. That variable has to work. So we're going to say if dollars, which is what the amount that they've entered, is greater than 0, then we put our block of code in here. So if it is valid, if they've entered 1, then we're going to calculate converted dollars. We're going to multiply, we're going to write it out, and we're going to show our answer. But if it's not, we're also going to have a block of code that executes surrounded by these curly braces. We are going to prompt them again. Actually, let's just alert them. Or let's just go ahead and continue on with document.write. And what we'll say is, I'm sorry, that amount is less than 0. Please try again. And they can reload the page at that point, or later on we could put it in a loop and let them automatically go back to the prompt. So this is a basic decision structure. If something inside the parentheses is compared, if this evaluates as true, then this code will run. Else, if that's not true, this code will run. Now we're going to do an example in a minute where we have more than one else, and we'll check multiple things. But let's go ahead and take a peek at how this works. We're going to save that. We're going to go over to our browser. We're going to Control O. That was our currency conversion. And we're going to tell it that we want to convert -10. And it's going to come up and say, I'm sorry, that amount is less than 0, try again. So it didn't pass the first test, and it fell through to the else statement and gave us our error message. So let's run it again, and this time let's convert $5. And notice that that is valid, and so it evaluates as a true statement, and it runs that. So that's a simple if then else. What we're going to do now is we're going to look at another example. We're going to ask the user to enter how many hours they've completed at Tarleton, and then we will determine what their classification is. So let's go here. I'm going to do File New. I'm going to go ahead and set up our document, classification by hours. And what we're going to do is we're going to prompt them right off the bat for their number of hours. So we're going to name that hours completed. It's going to be equal to prompt. How many college hours have you completed? We probably should say passed. And that will tell us that answer, and it'll store it in our variable named hours completed. And so we'll come in and we will say if hours completed, we're going to check first of all to see if they're a freshman. So we're going to say if hours completed is less than 30, then let's go ahead and alert you are a freshman. And I'm going to go ahead and type this all out, and then we'll come in. We'll do else if, and this time I'm going to say hours completed is less than or equal to, what is it, 60. Because if you have 60 hours, actually no, less than 60. Because if you have 60, then you're considered a junior. So we're going to do our next comparison. And if that's true, we're going to alert you are a sophomore. Close our curly braces for that part of the if. Else if hours completed is less than 90, oops, alert, you are a junior. And now what I'm going to do is I could do another comparison to see if hours completed are greater than 90, but we don't have to do that. And I'll explain why in just a minute. I'm just going to go ahead and say else. So everything else is going to end up alerting. Oops, not. We're going to alert you are a senior. So let's think through this. I'm going to close my script tag. I'm going to close my HTML tag, and then I'm going to close my body tag out of order. All right, so let's talk through this. Hours completed. Let's say they enter -2. For some reason, they entered -2. They failed 2 classes. I don't know. It doesn't matter because any negative number up to 30, they're going to be considered a freshman. So if they only took 3 hours and they failed those 3 hours, and for some reason they think they're clever putting in -3, doesn't matter because they're still a freshman at that point. Anything less than 30 would be considered a freshman. So if they enter 15, the way the if then else statement works is it goes through, and when it actually comes to a true statement, it executes the code that is associated with that, and then it drops out. So if they enter the number 15, it'll never compare to see if it's less than 60. It'll never compare to see if it's less than 90 because it satisfied this requirement here. It would then go ahead and put this alert up, and it would drop out of the if then else statement. So the reason at the end we don't have to do another comparison is because we get to a point where everything else, we kind of have the default or the punt option. So in this case, let's say they've entered 3,472 hours. That's not less than 30, so it won't be a freshman. It's not less than 60, so it won't tell them they're a sophomore. That large number is not less than 90, so it won't tell them a junior. Everything else besides 90, from 90 to 9999999 is going to alert as a senior. And that's why we don't have to do another if statement to see if it's greater than 90, because if it hasn't fallen out in one of these options, the only other option is that it is above 90 or above, and that they are a senior. So let's go ahead and save this as classification. .html. Let's go over to our browser and open that up. See if I managed to do that without a typo. So it asks me how many hours I passed, and I'm going to check all of my options. First of all, I'm going to tell it that I have 15. That tells me I'm a freshman. So I'm going to test it again. I have 32. Great. I'm a sophomore. I have 78. I'm a junior. And then finally, 3,742. I'm a senior. You always want to, when you're looking at these things, you want to test your logic, those decision points on what if you fall right on one of those marks? Like, do you need greater than, less than? Do you need greater than equal or less than equal? And so what I always do is I try the cusps of those things and say, I have 90 hours. Now, and in the real world, if I have 90 hours, I would be considered a senior. So I want to test that just to make sure that I have my logic correct. And in this case, I do. So that right there is basic if-then else statement. You can have multiple, many else ifs if you want to. In the next video, we're going to look at another comparison structure called the switch.